This video talks about objects and classes in Java. So what's a class versus an object? Well, the two are completely interrelated. A class is the blueprint or template that you will create or instantiate objects from. So an object is one instance of something made up by the blueprint of this class, of its class. Just a little visual here. We have our blueprint on this side, which is showing how a house would be constructed, how the size of the rooms, where the staircase is. And then we also have a picture here of our row houses in San Francisco, where you can tell each one has used the same blueprint, but the address is different, the color that's the house has been painted is different, the facades are somewhat different. So they all come from the same structure, but they have different properties. So what's the big deal with these objects anyway? Well, in Java, objects are a very big deal because every piece of code that you are running in Java is part of an object. And every class that's used to create these objects implicitly extends what I'm calling the mother of all objects, the class object. And yes, that is capital O object. We'll talk a little bit more about this when we go into inheritance in the next module. For now, let's just stick with our objects and classes. Let's look at this in code. So we go to Dr. Java, and I've coded up an employee class. So again, class is the blueprint. So when I code up a class, I am telling the compiler how I want an object to be constructed. And in this class, we have several private fields. Typically, when you're looking at a class, you want to set up the security or the accessibility of the class by making your members and fields private so that they can't be changed without the class or the object sort of knowing. And then making your methods public. So that somebody can create an object and then use the methods to get the information that they really need out of the class, out of the object, without having to know exactly how the object's constructed, being able to see all the data types, just get the information that is needed. And this is called data hiding or data encapsulation. So to create our class, it's a couple simple keywords that you've seen already. Public class, and then I give the name of the class. And then I've put the fields, the private fields here. And now the first field is static. This means that for every instance of this class, so every object that you create out of this class, there will only be one rand field. These other fields that I've declared don't have that static property. So with every instance or every object of this class, there will be a separate one. So every object will have its own first name, but all of the objects will reference or point to this same rand field. Something else that's unique to objects or to classes are these special methods called constructors. And a constructor is going to have the same name as the class, and it may take arguments or not. If it doesn't take any arguments, this is called the default constructor. But you can have many constructors taking many different arguments. And so in essence, you can overload a constructor. In this case, I'm taking three arguments: the first and last name and the salary of this employee. In the constructor, I'm going to go ahead and initialize all of these private fields that I have here. Now, I don't initialize my static member in the constructor because this constructor is going to get called every time an object is created. So I go ahead and instantiate and assign my static field in this part of the class. Now, another thing we can talk a little bit about is scoping. So within the methods, including the constructor and any other methods we declare within our class, and when we say within, it's anything contained within the curly brackets of the class. Everything within these curly black brackets can see everything else within them. So my getID function will see all of these member fields. Same with getHourlyWage, and the same with my print function. And by default, methods are public, but I'm going to put the public there just to be explicit. Okay, so how do we use this? We've now created our class. We've created our blueprint. Let's use it. Go to our main function, which, as you have seen before, and I will point out again, is also part of a class. I'm calling this class main. And inside of our main method, I am going to instantiate or create 3 employee objects. And I'm going to pass in different values for my different objects. And like we talked about with our housing example, I'm using my employee class as the template or the blueprint for the object I'm creating, but I'm giving different features or different values to each object. So our first employee will be Blossom, our second employee is Bubbles, and our third employee is Buttercup. And these are all different values given to our different objects. And then I'm going to go ahead and use one of the functions out of our object, which is called, which I have defined as a print function, just that will print out all of the information of each object. So I'll go ahead and run this again. And we see 3 different sets of printed information. One for Blossom, one for Bubbles, and one for Buttercup. And like the overarching theme we've been talking about, the class includes this print function, which is a template for how we want to print out our information. Just as an example, the class really is giving us the data structure, this structure that we declared here by grouping the strings together and the int together. But we also get the same functionality for each object through the methods we're declaring. I hope this has sparked your interest into classes and objects. because they are really two of the most fundamental concepts in Java programming that we will be using and you have been using as we continue with the course. So, all right, have a good one.